Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another edition of What We Love About. Today, we're going to be talking about the 2003 video game Return of the King. What is it about this game that anyone over the age of 25 just harkens back to? Is it the deep love that so many people have for the movies? Is it the love that we felt in the game itself back when video games were designed to actually be played for multiple weeks instead of one 24-hour period? I think it's the fact that we were able to play as these characters and actually complete their quests. In order to explain what it is that makes this game so memorable and so much fun, we have to remind ourselves about the original source material. The Lord of the Rings by J.R.R. Tolkien is one of, if not the greatest works of fiction of all time. His first work, The Hobbit, published in 1937, told the story of Bilbo and how he came to find the One Ring. The Lord of the Rings, which he wrote from 1937 to 1949, finished that story. It has sold over 150 million copies. It is the second most sold book of the 20th century, behind only the Bible. Tolkien wanted the whole story published as one book, but his publishing house couldn't afford it. You see, paper was still being rationed because of World War II. So they sold it in 3 volumes, with The Fellowship of the Ring being published on July 29th, 1954. And by the time they got around to publishing The Two Towers, just 4 months later, they were already republishing The Fellowship of the Ring. And a year later, when they published The Return of the King, they were republishing both of the first 2 books. So when Peter Jackson started on the journey of making his films based off of this epic story, few people could have expected such a masterclass in storytelling. So we understand the love of the books, and we understand the love of the movies. But what is it about this video game in particular? There have been several other Lord of the Rings video games, but there's something about The Return of the King that finds itself on everyone's list of loved video games or favorite video games they played as a kid. Really quickly, I want to tell my story of this video game. So, when I was 9 or 10 years old, my siblings and I had been very well behaved for several months, and my parents wanted to reward us for doing what we were told, completing our chores on time, helping out, all sorts of things that kids don't normally do when first asked. So, if anyone remembers back then, in the electronics sections of all the stores, they always had video game consoles where you could go and play the video games. So, I wanted a PlayStation because I would always play Ratchet and Clank. Well, my brother and sister wanted an Xbox. I don't really remember why, but they did. So we got an Xbox. So we needed to buy some games for this Xbox, and we bought The Return of the King and Operation Desert Storm. And I can still remember playing Return of the King with my brother. I remember how long it took for us to figure out how to defeat the King of the Dead. I remember watching him play as Samwise, and then when it was my turn, not understanding how to defeat those big orcs with the big bellies, and him taking the time to show me that you had to use the elven cloak so that you could blend in and you sneak around and you stab him in the back. I have all of these great memories, both of single player and co-op gaming on this game. Look, I've been a Lord of the Rings fan for a long time. We watched them as a family when they came out on DVD. And I just remember being awestruck by the size of Return of the King. And I think that's one of the reasons that this game is so incredible. It puts you in the world that you already wanted to be a part of, and it allows you to play through the parts of the story that aren't necessarily told. Things that happen off screen. The game allows you to do it. And come on, who didn't want to be Aragorn? Who growing up with this story didn't want to embody the majesty, the manliness, the fortitude, and resilience of Aragorn, son of Arathorn, heir to the throne of Gondor, the Elfstone, King Elisar? We all wanted to be him. So let's talk about the video game for a little bit. Beyond having 3 different campaign paths, which each could take a varying amount of time with different difficulties and just a bunch of different things to help keep you engaged in the game and keep you wanting to play it, it was fun. I remember my brother would always play as Aragorn, which made me play as Legolas. And that's kind of where my love for Legolas came from. It kind of fell I kind of fell in love with this character and his storyline and all that. And I've always been kind of a range guy because of that. With the exception of Skyrim, if there's a bow in the game, I always try to use it. And it didn't hurt that it would lock onto the enemies. I remember we had seen the Two Towers prior to getting the game. And, there's that scene in the Two Towers where Gimli and Legolas are counting on how many orcs they've killed. And so there's a contest, obviously. And I remember my brother and I would have the same contest. At the end of the mission, we would always check to see who killed the most orcs. And honestly, I couldn't tell you who won. That's one of those memories that's been lost to the ages. But I just remember having so much fun doing that. The story obviously follows the movie, and if you've seen the movie, you know what the story is. You don't need me to tell you what it is. But the other fun thing was, like other video games based off of movies at the time, they would intercut it with different clips from the movie. And so you got to kind of experience this really awesome story while you were playing the same really awesome story. The gameplay was another thing that was so great about this game. The movement wasn't robotic, like you never really felt like they didn't put the time or effort in. There's a lot of games today that just don't work. We've seen recently the last Lord of the Rings game, the Gollum one, and even more recently, this King Kong game that just look worse than this game did when it came out in 2003. It doesn't look like anyone cares. They're glitchy as hell. The controls don't respond correctly, and there's no help when you get stuck. But that's not the case with this game. This game was clearly a passion project. The people making it back when EA was a good company clearly wanted to put a good product on the shelves. This didn't feel like a copy and pasted version of a different game with new art. So I think it's a great example of what's missing from video games and other forms of entertainment today. Everyone's so focused on putting another thing out and reaching a deadline and making money that they don't bother to ask whether or not the project is complete. How many of those statements from the studios have we gotten in the last 4 years? That didn't used to happen. And while this is a what we love about, and I don't normally get negative in these, I think it's important to connect the negativity that we have with video games today with the reason that we still love this video game. That the love and care that we used to feel with video games a decade and a half ago, we just don't have anymore. And I think that's why we love this game. As always, thank you so much for stopping by. Don't forget to like and subscribe and follow us on Twitter at KingSadvisors_.